Thank you, Jonathan. And I'm so excited to start our first panel on a very hot topic, Data 360. For those who do not know me, my name is Winston Thomas, and I'm the editor-in-chief for CDOTrends, Digital Workforce Trends, as well as we have Data Ops Trends as well. So that's a few topics down there. Specifically today, the topic we will be discussing is Data 360, establishing a complete view of data to optimize business growth. Now that has been a goal of businesses for quite a long time as they are swimming in data. But we want, over the next 55 minutes, we would like to discuss about how enterprises are increasingly turning to data and look to identify business opportunities and what are the challenges they face in trying to get that complete view of data. We'll also discuss about different architectures that will allow for it. Lastly, if we have time, we'll also want to look at the idea about building better data trust and the rising role of data lineage. This discussion will be led by three panelists. We have, first of all, Felix Liao, APEC, Director of Product Management at Dinodo. Next, joining him, we have Deeksha Malik, Data Science Director from Pomelo Fashion. And from Thailand, we have Athikom Kanchanavibhu, Vice President, Business Transformation at Zuellig Pharma. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping rules. This session is about engagement and sharing, as what Jonathan was saying before. So we want you to share your comments, thoughts, and questions and be part of this conversation. So please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom to send in your questions, and we will moderate them and ask the panelists. As Jonathan also mentioned, we are giving out vouchers for the first three questions. It's not a competition, but just to get your blood flowing. So send in those questions and we'll make sure we'll get you caffeinated in due course. Lastly, the three panelists are joining us as thought leaders. So please view the points discussed today as based on their personal experience and drawing from their deep insights and not necessarily representing the company itself. That's it from me. Enough of hearing my voice. So let's start our discussion with a warm-up question. Maybe we can start with Athikom. Athikom, companies have been deploying data lakes as part of data modernizations, data warehouse modernization strategies. Today, people are talking about data lake houses, yet companies are still struggling to integrate their data sources and data silos. What's stopping them? What are the current challenges in unifying data sources? You're on mute. Sorry, Athikom.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. I think as for this question, for me, there are three key challenges that are preventing us from moving forward. The first one is about to have the valid business case for using data lake. The second one is about data governance when we talk about governance of the data from different data sources. And the third one is about the employee understanding of the data lake. What is it? What can be done for them? So as for the first one, when we talk about the business case, because we really need to ensure that there is a strong business case when we talk about if we're going to use data lake, because when we need to do something like this, it takes higher resource, time, and cost to sustain the landscape of having data lake and until we got the business insight, comparing to the traditional database in general. So we are consolidating external data source like our core SAP HANA and external data source to deliver business value. And with that, the business case could be something like having a proper demand supply planning, or to have the complete tender analytic industry assessment, for example. So we really need to have the solid business data case, data lake business case before we start to pick data lake, whether it fit to this or not. So we should not just think about we're gonna use data lake just for the use of the data lake, right? So the first one is about the challenge to find the business case, which the second one is about the data governance, because now when we talk about data lake, many of the data source that we put can become very complex to sustain it from technical and process aspect. When we talk about data cleansing, data normalization from different source, it takes a lot of effort and time from the team to integrate data and make it ready to be consumed. So this effort create additional layers of data preparation, to make the real-time analytics. This is a challenge because the more data source we have, the less real-time we can achieve unless we have a good process and tools in place that allow us to achieve the real-time analytics from the data lake. And the last one is about the people understanding of the data lake, because when we talk about data lake, not many people understand it clearly, what it is, what it can bring, the benefit, and mostly it limit to data analytic communities in the companies. And normally the business user will not have a good pictures of these terminologies, what is data lake about. So it takes time for them to really understand together and work together with us. So this is also preventing the business from raising the valid business case, because back to the first challenge, we need a good business case, right? And if the business user or management does not have a full understanding what is data lake, what it can be done, then they cannot connect between their business requirement and say, hey, this can be done by data lake or not. So to identify quality data lake business case, we also need to have the people and management to fully understand it properly, the tools. So yeah, with all the three challenging, it's something that we need to take time to educate people to understand it and make sure that the governance and tool in place is ready for us to pick on the business case. So yeah, that is my answer for the first question. Thank you.
Thank you, Athikom. And basically, you just answered all my questions for the entire discussion. So good job.
Oh, no.
Now, you pointed out valid use case, data governance, and as well as building a data-driven culture. I think all three are very valid points. Let's focus on the valid use case. Deeksha, coming to yourself, why are we struggling with the valid use case at this moment? What is missing in that picture?
Thank you, Winston. Thank you, Athikom. Actually, you spoke everything about it. So starting with the business use case, coming from the data science and analytics background myself for many years, business use case is very important, and with respect to the scale of the company itself as well. If the data size is small, not necessary that we need any data lakes. Maybe structured data warehouses might be good to do analytics, reporting, etc. Because like Athikom already said, it takes resources, it takes cost, it takes everything to sustain such things as well. And business use case, if I have to take an example from data science, sometimes we as data scientists find it very challenging to dig down into those data lakes to find what we really need. Because data governance is very important. Metadata management is also very important. So it's about the skill set, elevating those skill set, but in one person, we cannot have it all, right? We like always say. So it's very important, the right business use case in terms of architecture and infrastructure to be really neat. And it depends on the size of the company, size of the data as well. Back to you, Winston.
Thank you, Deeksha. And Felix, your thoughts on it, especially when you have a blog on LinkedIn saying it's time to rethink data management.
Yeah, I've got plenty of thoughts, Winston, but I was just making some notes. I thought Athikom and Deeksha makes a really good point. I mean, the use cases, before we even talk about technology, I mean, we were talking about this last time. I think it's important to absolutely understand the use cases. I personally have seen plenty of data lake being built in my time from customers just for the sake of loading the data lake without no valid cases, and that's typically recipe for disaster. A couple other things I think it's worth extending on the point already made is I think Deeksha made a really good point around there's no such thing as one size fits all, whereas Athikom thought they're really leaning into a data lake. In a lot of situations, EDW might be good enough, a data mart might be good enough. So I think that challenge will continue to have in terms of the different type of silos. I've yet to see a customer who can tell me, hey, after this one single repository, everything is in there. So I think in relation to the topic we're talking about, Winston, a true 360 view in a single system, I think that's still a bit of a challenging, which is why we're going to talk about a little bit later around the idea of a logical data fabric that lay across all the repositories you have to solve that problem. The other point I think is quite relevant that both Deeksha and Athikom mentioned earlier is the difficulty in using the data lake. I thought that's a really, really interesting point. And again, I've seen that in my experiences in dealing with customers. I do speak to a lot of data scientists, and particularly in the early days of Hadoop, I think Deeksha, you probably have nightmare around how people need to use Hadoop in the early days. Very, very difficult. It's getting better, but still not trivia, right? You need to, in the early day, you need to know MapReduce. Now you don't so much have to do that. There's Hive, there's SQL, but there's still a challenge around different skills that you need to learn. And I think that problem will not get easier, right? There will be a new database repository in the future. There'll be a new format. So I think the challenge around skill set will continue to haunt a lot of people going forward. Again, going back to what we will talk about is surfacing a logical layer to the end user. And in our case, the denoter, it will just be SQL. So all the end user will see is just a SQL interface, and we connect to all the different data repositories you have today and well into the future. I'll talk about that, how that delivers value from a data provisioning point of view. So just come back to that. I think the skill set is a problem, not just in terms of using the system you have today, but more, what's going to come down next year and the year after that.
Thank you, Felix. Athikom, I was interested in that last point that you raised in terms of making sure that the people understand what is a data lake and how to use them. Could you explain a bit more from your perspective and from your experience? Where is the challenge? Is it because it is driven too much like an IT project and not as a business project? Athikom?
Thank you. Yeah, I think when we talk about this people understanding, it depends on business context, and there are many factors. Sometimes it could be the wrong expectation from the senior management, or maybe it could be too little engagement during the journeys of working on some project together, or even sometimes it is the language barrier between the teams itself. In our case, the team is mainly in Singapore, so they speak English, but sometimes the users speak Thai. They are not very fluent with the language. That could be partly of the concerns, and or even sometimes it is the data scientist team itself for the lack of some industry or business insight enough to gain the valid recommendation, but that does not happen often though. So there are many things, and in my case, I think when we talk about we need to find a good business case to deliver the data-driven insight using a data scientist or data modeling. At the moment, I think the teams have different level of experience. And so we try to match them between the experience and the problem that we have received from the business. For example, we have the pharmaceutical client in Thailand that they would like to assess how effective the pricing scheme that they has been doing in the past few years, and then how they set up the customer tier between tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then how the campaign should be adjusted, and also based on external factors like COVID-19 situation that have a lot of impact to the landscape. So with that, initially, there is a lot of challenge between what the team of data scientists should deliver and what the business is expecting. But what happened is that the teams work closely with the senior management and commercial teams to really understand the data, and also we have a lot of meeting follow-up to ensure that the common goals of the projects is set in stone clearly between both parties, business side and the data scientist team. And also we have the regular update in terms of the methodology that we use, because sometimes data scientists use a lot of complex methodology and people don't understand. So there are regular catch up of the session between business management and data scientist team to explain that this is gonna be the methodology that we're gonna use, and explain briefly how it's gonna move forward, so that we have some fine tuning in terms of business understanding and the use case that we are working, until we reach to the final state that we give recommendation based on the data insight that we work together, that this what the finding that we find, and this is the recommendation how they should adjust the campaign moving forward. So with that kind of change, I think we see a good number of recommendation that the data scientist team provide, and then business also pick up many of them and decide to implement the recommendation. So yeah, so I'm not sure if that answers your question. Yeah.
Yes, you answered my question and the question that I'm going to ask later on, but that's good, Athikom. Deeksha, Athikom actually highlighted an interesting point in terms of sometimes data science teams talk a different language from the management, and there have been also reports where management seems to be sometimes not impressed with what the data science team some deliver, but maybe it is the wrong problem statement, or it could be too much expectations. From your point of view, as a data science lead, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Winston. Thank you, Athikom. Actually, I'm trying to hide my smile because this has been struggle for many years. I have been facing being in industry. It's not the new thing I am coming across. It's right. Actually, senior leadership, when they are experienced, they're experienced in the core business. I don't want to say anything like everyone has their own experiences, own expertise in their area. When it comes to data science or data analytics, they want to take data first, support their insights or their recommendation based on the data. I have come across in my experience as well, data might not be correct, like, data quality, data 360 we are talking about. If that is not correct, no matter what, how big the data science model is, how experienced or how complicated or how advanced it is definitely going to fail. And then their senior leadership experience, when they come with their years of experience talk about it, definitely they will say that, okay, this is not we are agreeing because we are looking at a different thing, and this data is talking. So again, going back to data science, it's an art to understand what data to use into your analysis or modeling. So that is something I have been experiencing. Like, we have to definitely definitely have to elevate and bring business and analysts and data scientists together to see, okay, sometimes we work on the causation analysis. I know if you have heard of that famous example, many people take in this industry. Okay, in summers, many people are drowning in swimming pools. How can people drown, right? And the hypothesis was, many people who are having ice cream, they are drowning in swimming pools. How can you relate? These two data are not connected, but business will think a different angle. Okay, people who are having ice creams, they're going to pools and they don't have their focus on concentration and they drown, right? So this kind of things happens when you are experienced and you have experience about everything, but data, you will not get that way, right? So how we can connect these two together, quality of the data I want to mention because it's very important. Garbage in, garbage out. That is very important. I have been facing in the industry for quite long and still struggling until date how we can connect different data points, data connects to provide the right and accurate recommendation. And honestly speaking, we cannot attain 100% accuracy at all. Yeah, back to Winston.
Thank you, Deeksha. And Felix, I'm coming to you. Deeksha came out with a very important point. It's one thing to have data and coming out with insights, another thing to ask or infer through experience, but there is always that gap, which is much more difficult, is to interpreting data according to practical insights or experience, having that business knowledge while having the data skills. So Felix, when you work with clients, what are the challenges? How are they actually solving this or plugging the gap?
Well, yeah, thanks, Winston. I think the good news, I'm not sure if it's good news. Yeah, Deeksha, the challenge you described, it's almost universal, right? I think everyone understands to a large extent, data management analytics to a large extent, it is a cultural process, organizational problem. So, those challenges are unique. Having said that, I think we are seeing some new approaches. I think Winston, I'll touch on some of these. I think could be of value to, I guess, the audience. To the point you mentioned earlier, Deeksha, around the disconnect between the data science team and the IT team. I think there's potentially another audience here, which is, you know, a lot of the new white papers, the article talk about in terms of the data domain owners. So I'll talk about that briefly. You know, data mesh, which is a new emerging approach to data management, talk about the shift to not just getting the IT to own the data, but get the business domain team to actually own and publish the data. I think it solves a number of problems. First of all, the data domain team, they should know the data. You know, Deeksha, going back to your point, what does the customer data should look like? Well, the customer domain team should know about that. They know CRM, they know the core system banking, so know what it should look like. They should be responsible for publishing that. Likewise for products, for claims, for policies. So, you know, this shift to, I think, domain-based ownership around data, not just management, but publication, I think is an interesting trend that we're seeing now. And I think potentially could go some way to, you know, one, obviously providing, you know, true 360 view of, you know, a particular domain, as well as to the point you made earlier, Deeksha, you know, what is the quality data should look like in that particular domain.
Felix, you're talking about data meshes, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Just want to say that we have lots of questions coming through the chat. Please do use the Q&A button so that we can see the questions and I can field to the the panelists. Now, at this time, I would like to bring in Felix. Felix has an interesting presentation. He's going to tell us how to unify data for real-time business decisions, and then after that, we will continue the discussion as it goes. Felix, the virtual floor is yours.
Thanks, Winston. Can I just do a quick audio and visual check? You guys can see my slides okay?
Good.
Fantastic. Just a real quick 10 minutes overview around, you know, Denodo, what is it we do, and why does that matter to, I guess, organization today? Real quick, Denodo is not particularly well known in industry, but you know we're being in the data management space for quite a long time, since 1999. We do have a very strong focus and philosophy around the power of data virtualization. As a result of that, you know, we're being recognized as a leader in a number of analyst paper, you know, the Gartner Data Integration Quadrant, as well as you know, the Forrester paper on data fabric, data virtualization. As a result of that, we've got over 1,000 customers now. As of now, you know, you can see some of the logo there, and we're expanding really, really rapidly across the world. You know, last year we had about 50% growth, and I think that just goes to show, I think, the interest around, you know, a distributed approach to data management. So with that said, again, what is it we do? And what exactly is data virtualization? I realize it might be a foreign, I guess, technology for some people. Before I get into that, I actually want to talk about the problem statement. You know, what a problem are we trying to solve? And it's pretty simple in that, you know, we are trying to solve some of the problem, in fact, we already talked about and discussed in this panel around the need for faster, more accurate data for better decision making, first and foremost, right? That's kind of a no-brainer and a given. Second point also goes to the point we touched on, is the fact that some people's got data lakes, some people's got EDW, some people's got new cloud data repositories. You know, the data landscape has been complex, and I would argue is going to be increasingly more complex going forward. You know, you add on-premise and cloud to that equation, it's quite complicated. So we want to help business deal with that complex data landscape. Third one, in fact, particularly relevant for, I guess, for pharma, for bank, is the risk of regulation compliance. And that's particularly sensitive as it relates to data and data management. So we want to help organization manage their area in terms of things like GDPR, data privacy, security and governance, and that's a really, really big requirement area for us. Let me kind of paint the landscape for you, and it's a little bit of a exaggeration, but I think I get the points across. You know, most organizations today, they have a whole bunch of data repository. You can see a whole bunch of them down the bottom, right? EDW, data lake, even applications, software as a service. And then, you know, you want to surface that through end user applications, data science tools, BI tool, cloud data science tool, and Deeksha can probably recognize a whole bunch of these different tools. And as a result of that, you know, we've had to build various different pipelines. We've had to build ETLs, replications, duplication of data, basically business as usual. So that, in a nutshell, kind of highlights some of the challenges we see as it relates to agilities, compliance, and trying to simplify the data architecture. So what Denodo we've been focused on is simplifying that data pipeline component by deploying a logical data fabric layer that has give you a single point of access, single point of security control, as well as things like governance and metadata management. But if you look underneath into the platform, it actually does a lot more than that. For example, we have a specific data catalog services that provide things like self-service, data marketplace. We have various different transformation, optimization engine built into the tool to really deal with the problem of performance. Because at the end of the day, getting access data is good, but if it's too slow, it's of no good. So we are really, really focused on optimizing this performance of the query engine. And obviously on the right-hand side, very, very sophisticated security and governance functionalities as it relates to things like data masking, data redaction, building really sophisticated things like row level security, column level security, which is very, very critical to enterprise today. We spoke of data mesh previously, Winston. I want to kind of highlight, what the principle is and how it maps to data visualization technology. And it's hard. Data mesh talks about domain-based organization, right? And you can see this in this example. We've got the customer domain, we've got events domain, we've got HR domain. So through virtualization, the first thing we enable the domain to build domain-specific data view. So for example, a customer view, a 360-degree view, a retail customer view on top of your repositories, regardless what they are. It could be EDW, could be data lake, could be Snowflake, doesn't really matter. We're allowed to build this data view in a very domain-focused organization framework. Secondly, then you can change and switch and add your underlying repository. To the point I was making earlier, Deeksha, you might have some EDW today, you might have some data lake tomorrow. The abstraction level simplify that process. You can actually move your data repository, but present the same unified view because it's been abstracted out, being decoupled from the underlying data repository. And then after you build the view, then you can produce what the data mesh principle call as data as a product. What that really means is about surfacing the data in the shape or form that the consumer wants to access. The common one obviously is a SQL interface, but what about GraphQL? What about OData? What about REST APIs? Depending on the application and the context, the user wants to use the data through different ways. For example, what about for data scientists? They want to access it through a Python package as a Panda data frame. We want to support that process really, really easily as well. And the final point around through the platform, through the unified abstraction control layer, you have a single point where you can imply and execute data policy as it relates to PII data, data security, data policy. So you have a single control plane for you to secure the data, as opposed to secure the data at all the underlying repository below the hood. So that's just a really, really quick overview around the data mesh principles and how, I guess, through data virtualization, we're helping a lot of customers realizing the principles and the vision as it relates to data mesh. All right, real quick. As well as data mesh, we also help customer with a whole bunch of different use cases. You can see here things like IFRS 17s, GRC compliance, and things like single customer view, data governance, data security. The list goes on. But just to give you a flavor around the flexibility of the technology, and we really seeing customer embracing it for all different use cases across the board. I think more importantly is the ROI, right? We recently did an analysis around the total economic impact of data virtualization. There's a link to the white paper we can share with the audience later on, but talks about the ROI of 408%, as well as an NPV of 6.8 million. But I think the thing that's particularly powerful to me is the payback. A lot of the time, data management analytics project today, particularly as it relates to data lake, it takes a long time to see payback, right? Years, if not more than that. With data virtualization, we're seeing really, really rapid payback just because it's really, really easy to deploy this technology. We see in the vicinity of 6-month payback, which is really powerful and really useful as it relates to building business case and building ongoing funding for your projects. Real quick, we have some pretty large customers you can see here. I won't spend too much time. BHP is a local customer in Australia. It's a large global mining company. They have a global operation. They have data all over the place around the world, where some of them they can't necessarily move and replicate. So they're using Denodo to build a data fabric, the access provide data through for all the employees across the world through the data virtualization layer, as I just talked about earlier. All right, just in closing, we do have a trial environment, which you can see here on the URL. I'm sure we can send a link after this. So if you're curious, if you want to find out what you can do with it, by all means, sign up and you can get up and running really, really quickly and easily. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Winston.
Thank you, Felix. panelists. I would like to start with Deeksha. Deeksha, Felix was talking about domain knowledge and hence the idea about data meshes comes through. But even before the concept of data meshes, domain knowledge has always been important for data science. So I'm just wondering, how do you actually encourage or how do you crystallize data domain knowledge within your team?
That's a very good question, Winston. Data domain knowledge, it comes by it comes by special field as well, especially working in retail industry myself for more than a decade. There are so many areas divided, right? So for example, we have pricing, we have marketing, we have merchandising, we have supply chain, logistic, operations. One cannot learn and do everything, right? So how we do, uh, we try to team up and diversify. So try to learn what we are into different areas, then try to make other person learn about it, how we are tackling different data domains, because we have different data sources coming and connecting in the data lake as well. Like, data management, data structures are happening. So we try to elevate each other's skills like that. Different business use cases also help in terms of identify what data domain we should get into, what business use case will be connected to that data lake or that data warehouse, tables, etc. This is how we are usually doing in general. Yeah.
And Athikom, what about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. As for myself, we keep evolving a lot in terms of the data organization, but the basic principles is that people gonna have the basic domain that they focus, like data engineering always focus around how they're gonna focus on the tools that help to integrate data from different data sources using Python or R to help us speed up the data transformations. But the data architect will always focus around the architectures of that tools. And then for the data scientist team, yes, this is a spatial domain, but the domain that is quite big in terms of the people that have, and they have different specialties and different level of the skill that they have as well. So we keep adapting the team. In the past, they are focusing around the product. Data products. So meaning they are focusing around, this is the transactional analytic dashboard, like sales out, inventory, blah, blah, blah. Another team focus around the industry analytics, combining the data inside Zuellig Pharma and external data source and providing the complete industry analytics, whether it's gonna be like tenders, industry, animal health, medical device, for example. And then it start to evolve a bit from the product centric to become the customer process or customer journey centric. For example, if you talk about commercial area, we are not talking about the product centric, but move to the commercial centric. For example, we talk about sales and operation planning. Now, when we talk about sales and operation planning, where data analytics can provide the insight during the planning, during the monthly operation review, the price review, for example. So we start to shift people from thinking about product centric to become the real business cycle centric, so that we can really plug in the solution we have, and the business can also understand that they can relate easier, because in the past we go to them and say, this is data product we have, and then there need to be another translation. This product is what in their business operation, but now they are trying to streamline that and build the capability of the people based on the business operation point of view. Another layer is we use the level of year of experience. So normally when we have the initiative together or some projects, we mix up between the senior people and the junior. and we continue to have that in place, so that there are both opportunity for the senior to contribute and the junior one to learn as well. So it's still kind of that, I think, and it's not solid in stone. A thing need to be changed a lot in current years. Everything need to be agile. So, but that is how it is working at the moment.
Thank you, Athikom. And I was just going to go into some of the questions that's coming out on the Q&A, but just before that, I'd like to bring in Felix. Felix, you have heard from Deeksha and Athikom. You've also penned a blog on multipliers in data science teams. So what needs to change? How are data science teams evolving?
I think everything is going to be kind of being talked about, Winston. If I could kind of summarize everything, distill everything down, I think it'll be the following, right? So I think we all know where we need to go in terms of I guess bridge the gap in terms of the data knowledge and data science team. I think what we do know now, in hindsight, is IT is probably the worst thing to be in charge of managing deploying that. It's not necessarily their fault, because they just don't have the domain knowledge in hindsight. All this year we be leaning into IT to build a data warehouse. No wonder we kind of suffer through all these years. So I think that's a key lesson for all of us. I think everyone's come to the realization. I think I actually do want to go back to Athikom's original point, which is the use case focused approach. That actually ties back to the domain thing very, very nicely, because once you have a clear use case around what problem you're trying to solve, what process you want to automate, then the need for specific type of domain and the domain team will come naturally. And I always tell customer, how do you start the process of doing data mesh implementation? You start with a use case, and then from the use case you come to realization, oh, I need the policy domain team, I need the clinical domain team, and you find the people responsible for that, and then surface and organize and publish those data. I think that's kind of some of the key takeaway for me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And one of the things I wanted to bring out was this conversation that's going on whether data warehouse is the same as data lake. And I know, Deeksha, you have answered that. Why are we? Is there a confusion on data warehouse and data lake? Is there an issue? Is this a communication issue that Athikom was talking about, in terms of people are confused in terms of what a data lake represents? Deeksha?
Wow.
Yeah, Winston, I agree, because definitely it goes back to, again, the experience, because many people are going into this world. I call it very fancy these days, data science. Usually it used to be like statistical modeling and analytics way before. Now it's data science. And yes, there is a confusion. When in past experience, I can share one of the examples. When I joined in, it was like data science team should use data lake, and data reporting and analytics team should use data warehouses. And I got a little bit confused myself way then. I'm talking about like years back. And same confusion I had as well. Then I tried to understand at code level, okay, what's the difference? Like I already answered in the Q&A section as well. What I understood and learned is a data lake is very raw. It's a data dump from different sources. You have API integrations from different tools, sources in the retail world, and whatever is coming, flowing, the pipeline, it dumps exactly as it is into that data lake. And data science, because models doesn't require that much, we can clean data. Like today, 80% of our time as a data scientist goes into data cleaning as well, right? But for reporting, real-time reporting, we can't do that. And data warehouses and data engineering team on top of it, data warehousing team actually works on it, cleans some data and put it into data warehouses, a little time snapshot if it is required, because it's very costly to sustain data warehouses back if I need the years and years of data, right? So that has been the difference which I have been learning and trying to learn. Data science, please go ahead, use data lake. Data reporting and analytics team, please go ahead, use the data warehouses. Yeah.
Felix, points of view?
Yeah, it's a big topic, Winston, as you know, right? So, but I think I think some important points here. So first of all, to some extent, it's a matter of semantic, right? Because the definition are kind of evolving as we go, right? But generally speaking, EDW and data warehouse, data lake describe two different kind of types of technology or solution. EDW we all know really, really well, Teradata, Oracle, and there's some certain characteristic, right? They're very, very highly structured, very controlled, and very mature. The performance is almost guaranteed, but they're not as flexible, right? You have to model the data beforehand. They tend to be quite expensive. There's certain characteristics associated with EDW. Data lake, on the other hand, tend to be cheaper, right? They're highly redundant architectures. You can store anything you want, really, as to Deeksha's point, very, very granular. But they do suffer in a number of key areas. Let me give you a couple of examples. Security has generally been lacking in data lake. They're not as robust, not as flexible as EDW. The other one is from the just general data management point of view, they also has major issues. Let me give you another example. As of recently, you can't actually delete data in the data lake. To some FSI and Pharma, that's a problem. Sometimes you have to know you've actually deleted the data. Now, data lakes improving the technology. So to some extent, if you look at the industry trend, they're merging, right? Data lake vendor claiming they are becoming EDW claiming they are adding data lake. So they are merging to some extent. But I think it will take a long time to have a truly merged technology, and God knows what else is going to come along. And to the point I was making, then Winston, in the meantime, you can always just layer the node on top of it, and that solves your problem.
A good segue, Felix. Athikom, your viewpoint?
Yeah, thank you. I think I would like to talk a bit about why people confusing about data scientists use data lake. Maybe my assumption, maybe Deeksha need to do a hypothesis testing later. I think data scientist is the terminology that's come like a few years back, and data lake also happened about the same times. And then people don't really understand what are they about. They just know they are new things in data analytic world. So they just have the mindset that, so data scientists supposed to use data lake. It is something new, something powerful, that kind of thing. But I do agree that there are definitely not the case. And to me, I think data lake is something that more on the data engineering, data architect area. But then the data scientist doesn't always need to use data lake at all. They can just use any data, right? Whether it's going to be relational, traditional database, or data lake or whatsoever. So yeah, I think so data scientists just always need to go back based on the business case, what they're going to use, and then choose the tools that fit to the business requirement or the problem. So it can be anything. It can be advanced data modeling with programming script, or it can be something basic like traditional tools, or even statistic models, the traditional one that can be done. So that is my view. Thank you.
Okay. Another question that actually came to me through another chat was, we are talking about 360 data or data 360, and we are assuming that the data lake in theory will have all the data to give you the data 360, but in real life, people are asking maybe we should be adding other types of data to enrich the data to give us that 360 viewpoint. Of course, there is an argument that maybe that definition of data 360 needs to be put down and defined first before we actually talk about the different concepts. Maybe I can ask Deeksha, from your data science point of view, how extensive can first party and maybe in your case, even zero party data, would that give you that data 360, or do we need to have third party data coming in to enrich it?
Actually, it's a good question, Winston. Still have to think about it in that way, but data 360 also depends on what, again, going to what Athikom said, like it depends on the business case as well. First, it is good if we have a proper metadata management to understand, okay, what kind of data is available, how we can connect that well to that business case. That's very important. But again, it's also subjective. Data 360 is also subjective by company to by company as well. Sometimes we are working customer centric, right? A company is a customer centric, and they just want to go data 360 just related to customers. And if a company is like a retail company and they want to have a data 360 from each and every angle, so we need to understand the business use case, the type of the company, if it is a consulting company, what kind of client it is, and how we can get into different data 360 from different data sources. That's what I have been experiencing. Yeah.
Thank you, Deeksha. And Athikom, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think for this question, there is something that I feel like is a bit chicken and egg. If we have a complete 360-degree data, then of course data scientists will be able to play around with the data and then deliver the best possible insight. But we in practical, we cannot. I think we have data in many data sources, and usually data owners will not just, they will have resistance to give away the data, the access to the data team, which I think they are not just because they want to keep the data with them, but they need to protect the business data. And in many cases, we are talking about personal data that involve local regulation, that they come up with the subject consent approval from the data subjects, right? So we cannot just give all the data to data analytic teams to access everything they want. So they cannot have like universal passport and access everything, right? So we really need to go back to the business case and be clear what data we need to access, and discuss properly with data owners, whether it's going to be internal data source owners or external like government regulations or third-party data providers. So yeah, so that we really need to go back to the business case, make sure that we define a clear use case and try to get the access to the data that we really need to use. Not everything, not just throw everything into the data lake and then play around, but back to the think first what we need to get the data for, and then start working based on what we need to use. Yeah, so that's my point of view. But I do believe data team always want to access everything, but in reality that cannot be the case. We really need to spend extra effort in terms of discussion with the data owners.
Thank you, Athikom. Good points. Felix, I was just wondering, Deeksha actually mentioned metadata management, and this relates to data lineage as well. I'm just wondering, in your conversations with customers and dealings out there in the market, how important is this? Because this seems, metadata management as well as data lineage seems to be coming up to be a much more important conversation for a lot of companies at this moment.
Yeah, it's a good point. Metadata has been around for a long time, right? I think generally speaking, there's different type of metadata. As we know, there's technical metadata, there's business metadata, and there's I guess operational metadata like lineage, right? And they all have different purposes, as you rightly pointed out. Things like lineage are very important, relevant for governance, right? Once you got the data, you want to know where it comes from, where it's going. But I think one interesting new trends that maybe more as a takeaway for everybody is the use of active metadata, operational metadata for advanced functionality through ARML. So one interesting trend we're seeing, and we're certainly embracing that, is actually building ARML into the solution itself. Let me give you a good example. Through our data visualization engine, we know what kind of data people are using, right? Because we track in the metadata, we know what they're using. So we want to now use that active metadata to do things like recommendation. Right, so based on your usage, you want to recommend what you're likely to see. We're also using the metadata for optimization engine. So, putting the Nodo aside, if you do, you work with metadata or speak to other vendor on metadata, ask them the question around, how are you using my metadata? What use cases are you using? Because there's a lot of value to be had.
Good one. Times are closing. We're reaching our closing time for this discussion. So there are a lot of good points that have been coming up. Just want to know, Felix, maybe you start with Deeksha. Deeksha, what are your thoughts of the discussion so far? What you have learned and your quick takeaways?
Thank you, Winston, and thank you, Felix and Athikom. I think I have learned quite a bit from different industry perspective, how we are doing in terms of data lake, and I really enjoyed answering some of the questions on the chat box as well, which made me understand to think around from a different perspective how it is still evolving, right? Because we always try to assume, okay, what I understand, maybe it's already there or it's already evolved or still I am behind. Sometimes I think, okay, maybe I am behind, I'm lagging behind. But like Felix mentioned, it is still universal. It is still based on the cultural. And Athikom said it's still based on the business use cases. And some of the questions being asked, okay, what's the difference between data lake and data warehouses, which I have been struggling years back and still there. I think we all really have to come together like these forums and try to understand where we can help and support each other and elevating our skills so that we can go back as a thought leader in our industry, because every year there is a batch of new data scientists, analysts, engineers, architectures are coming, right? So it's again cascading down such information. If it is not done in a right way, or at least close to accurate way, like in data science models, we cannot have 100% accuracy. 90% is good to kick off it, or we say 80% is also good to kick off it. So I think we have to think in that direction, how we can have such discussions ongoing and support and elevate and uplift each other, making next generations doing the right things. Yeah, Winston, thank you.
Thank you, Deeksha. And Athikom, what about yourself?
Yeah. As for me, I do really enjoy the discussion today, and yes, I also do learn a lot as well. I think what I would like to give as a takeaway is a couple of points. The first one is about the tools itself. I think every organization need to keep assessing the tools, because this area evolve a lot every days, every month. So the data leadership team, yes, definitely need to keep update and try to explore the tools. I think we are now in the world that trying the new tools is very not complex thing anymore. We have cloud, so you can provision many things to try out the tools. If it fit, you can use it. If it not, then you can move on. So the first thing is, I think the tools is something that we need to keep looking on and make it open to try to adopt. Even that means we need to have the people in the team learn some new skills. But I think it worth to keep exploring the tools, because that will eventually help you improve the competitiveness of what you can deliver as a data analytic organizations. And the next one is I think we should be open to be more than data analytic. I mean, if we talk about what data analytic can deliver alone, probably it is 50% of the business case that we can solve. But if data analytic teams go together with another teams, it could be digital, it could be IT, or it could be business functions. There are more business cases that we can solve together as a complete solutions. So so that's what I would like to give example. There are we have the platform to manage the vaccine, COVID vaccine 19 that we distribute. So with data analytics alone, we cannot have an end-to-end solution for that. But when we combine that with mobile application, blockchain, and website, right, we have an end-to-end solution to manage from the patient registration at vaccine administration until we track and monitoring a dashboard that help we manage supply chains. So I think we should, as a data analytics, should keep open mind to work with different domain outside data analytics and deliver the solution together that will unlock additional more business case that data analytics can provide the solution. Yeah, so that's my comment. Take away.
Thank you, Athikom. And yeah, it's interesting. You have the chance for big pharma to actually understand the populations who are actually using the vaccines and build direct relationships. So I think it's going to be a very interesting times. Felix, what about yourself? Quick thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Winston. Just real quick, I think maybe I'll leave on some positive notes. I think, we talked about a lot of issues and problems, but I think personally, I think it's a pretty exciting time to be involved with data analytics, right? As I think we're very, very fortunate because there are a lot of new technologies, new approaches. We touch on some of these, things like convergence, the VDW, data lake, a lot of the new things, and not just technology, they different architecture, different approaches, and we touch on some of them. So I think it's really important to have an open mind, particularly now, because as well as problem, there are solutions. And a big shout out to your CDO Winston. I think it's never been more important to attend conferences like this, because the solution you're probably looking for are out there somewhere. So I think it's a pretty exciting time to be involved in this area. But do keep an open mind.
Thank you, Felix. Yes, It's all about keeping an open mind. So that's all we have time for this discussion. First of all, I would like to thank personally all our panelists and our sponsor, Denodo, for participating. And to our audience, please stay on. We will have a second panel in a second, and you'll get to hear me again. And it will be about the end-to-end automation of analytics. Thank you all.